I'm Wes Kale. Welcome to the program. In today's class, we're going to explore status reporting. As we will see, status reporting is arguably the most central function of project management. It is so important that we're going to devote no fewer than 3 classes to status reporting. In the first show of today's class, we're going to first look at the purpose of status reporting. Then we're going to look at the nature of status reporting. How does it work? How does it really influence a project? And finally, we're going to provide a high-level process for those who need to put together status reports on how to do that. But in the second show of today's class, that's where we're going to drill down into how to actually put a status report together. And we have an example we're going to walk you through so you get a better feel of how the different components of a status report are assembled, proved, and then finally sent out. Okay, so let's move on to what we're going to cover today and look first at the topics on our agenda. We're going to be covering 4 topics in this particular show. The first one is, why do we need status reports? We're going to look at the dimensions of a project that require us to put together status reports. Then we're going to talk about how status reports work. Specifically, why are status reports effective? Not only what do they do, but what is it about them that makes them effective at doing that? Then we're going to move on to developing the status report, and here we'll look at the 5 key steps of assembling a status report. And then we'll close by looking at the basic structure of a status report. Here we'll provide an outline of those sections which are probably the most important to see in any status report. It's not a complete list of all the sections in the status report. We actually delve into that in the second show. But for those of you who may not be putting together status reports and therefore will not need to go through the second show, we at least want to provide you a high-level view into what you should look for in a good status report. So let's move on to our first topic of why we need status reports. You may have heard the old maxim that what is not measured is not managed. Well, recall from our first videocast where we talked about what is project management. The objective of project management is to manage the change process. So when we think about status reports, what we're looking for is an instrument that will allow us to measure and manage the change process. You may recall that when we talked about managing change, there are actually 2 problems that we had to account for. First was the problem of risk, and secondly was the problem of how people react to risk, and that these 2 problems tend to feed upon one another in order to cause problems in the project. Well, status reports are highly effective at mitigating both problems, and the reason why is that status reports essentially perform 3 functions. The first function is that they coordinate activities, and we'll talk more about this in just a moment. They inform decisions, and they control disruptions. In fact, these 3 functions tend to work together in unison, and we convey this in this triangle here, where all 3 components influence the potential forces of disruption in your project. And what we're going to do now is we're going to walk through each one of them to give you a better feel for how status reports perform these functions. First of all, turning to coordinating activities. Status reports have 4 aspects that serve a coordination role in a project and help keep everyone on the same page. First of all, they establish the facts of the project. As you may recall in our earlier video cast on the 5 most important practices, one of them was fact-based decision-making. Well, what status reports do is they establish the facts for the entire stakeholder community as to what is going on with the project. There may be any number of facts that pertain to this project, and only a subset of those will actually be reported in the status report. But those facts that are reported in the status report are facts that are understood by all stakeholders that receive the status report. So as discussions are held around various issues of the project, it provides a fact baseline that everyone should be able to work off of. The second thing that status report does here is it provides transparency. It provides visibility into the performance of the project, the dependencies of the project with other projects, as well as dependencies of tasks within inside the project. And it also gives a view into the nature of the issues that the project is wrestling with. Quite often folks may be able to see that the schedule is not being met or there's muttering about how things are going, but they really don't understand what the issues are. Well, the status report is that vehicle for providing visibility into the nature of the issues that are affecting the project. The third piece is it fosters awareness. When we think about fostering awareness, we're really focused upon those stakeholders who are 1 to 2 levels removed from the project. Those levels may be in terms of management levels or levels in terms of functions or departments removed from what's going on in the project. And these folks may not have any other way for finding out conclusively what is going on in the project, and the status report is that tool. In fact, in the minds of some folks, this is the preeminent reason for why we publish status reports. And finally, status reports maintain confidence. In essence, a status report is the project manager's declaration to the stakeholder community about how things are going. And ordinarily, when things are going well, it really doesn't matter what the project manager may have to say. However, when things are not going so well on the project, or there's uncertainty or ambiguity about how things are going on the project, the mere fact of issuing a positive statement about here's where we are, here's how I view things, here's what we're doing going forward, has a tremendous effect upon the confidence of not only the immediate project team, but also for the stakeholders who are successively further removed from the project. So these are the four components of how a status report coordinates activity. Let's move on to the second component of why we need status reports, and that deals with controlling disruptions. And in the view of Kale Partners, this actually is the preeminent reason of why we do status reports. The fact of the matter is that all projects face unproductive behaviors. You may recall from the What is Project Management videocast, we talked about the presence of risk and uncertainty that can lead to stakeholders behaving in unproductive ways. Okay? Well, those unproductive behaviors can manifest themselves in many ways. Folks may disagree about the origin of an issue. They may plead ignorance to something that is going on that they should know about. They may not like how decisions were made in the past, and they may want to rewrite the history around them. But there's all sorts of things that could be viewed as unproductive behaviors, and status reports are a very powerful check on this for three reasons. First of all, in addition to establishing the facts, status reports establish the truth. And the difference between those is subtle, but very, very important. Once you publish a status report that has a series of facts that the project manager believes to be true, there's an implicit understanding that if someone who receives the status report disagrees or has a question with a fact that is stated in the status report, they need to step up and question that, and they need to make sure that they're comfortable that what was stated is not just a data point, a fact, but also that it is true. In some organizations, they actually establish this principle that it's incumbent upon stakeholders when they see something in the status report that is not correct in their view or they don't understand it, they're required to question that in order to make sure that whatever is in the record of the project is indeed the truth. We call this feature of status reports where facts are turned into truth through the give and take of people contesting what they see in the status report as a forge. And that status reports serve as a forge for taking facts and turning them into truth so that everyone is on the same page as to what's taking place. The second piece of status reports that control disruptions is that it compels action on open issues. And this is a subtle but interesting aspect of status reports, and it works in two steps. First of all, there's any number of issues that may be open in a given project, 40, 50, 100, whatever. But the project manager may only want to call out 4 or 5 in a given status report that need to be attended to. But the fact of putting those issues out there on the status report as open issues that need to be addressed profiles the accountable individual in the eyes of all the other recipients of the status report that, hey, this thing is open and it's on you. Where does it stand? So essentially it's a clear call to the accountable individual to step up and to close out this issue. And that's where the second stage comes in. You know, if you publish a status report every 2 weeks and an open issue appears in the first status report, that is a notification to the individual that, look, we're expecting you to make progress on this. But if another status report comes out in 2 weeks and this task was not completed, now you have a different issue in that not only do you have the problem of the issue is not complete, but people are starting to wonder about why this issue is not getting completed when clearly it's important enough to report in the status report. Both of those, initial profiling of the individual and then the follow-on identification of the issue not being closed, are subtle but powerful ways of pressing upon open issues to get them closed out. And the third way in which a status report controls disruptions is that it deters unproductive behaviors. And as with compelling action on open issues, deterring unproductive behaviors takes place in 2 ways as well. The first one is dissuasion, and this is a byproduct of establishing the facts and the truth. Fundamentally, once you've established the facts and the truth on what's going on in the project, it raises the costs of objection to folks who might want to object later on down the road. With a publicly declared truth, if you don't like that truth, you've got to be willing to invest some effort and risk in order to challenge that truth. And this can be useful in 2 regards. First of all, there are some folks who will surface issues that are what we call red herrings. They're not material, but they're very distracting to the project, and they can suck up a lot of time and effort trying to stamp them out. And secondly, when there's an uncomfortable issue in the project that is leading to difficult change for some of the stakeholders, by establishing the facts and truth about what's going on regarding that issue, it makes it more difficult for folks to object to that. They've got to get their thoughts, not that they can't object to what's taking place, but they need to discipline themselves and to think through their position, to understand what their concern is, to be able to express that to other people. And if they can't do that, well, then they're kind of fighting an uphill battle. They're actually responding emotionally to what's taking place, not intellectually. And therefore, it makes it difficult for them to raise emotional objections. So, in essence, a status report, through dissuasion, incents people to think more clearly about what their concerns are. The second component of how a status report deters unproductive behaviors is the carry forward of the first. With a written record of the facts and truth on the project, those facts and those truths, they introduce a splinter in the minds of all people about, I know this has been stated to the group as to where we stand on issue A or issue B or issue C. And so therefore, as I conduct myself going forward, I've got to be mindful of that. I've got to respect that truth. So therefore, if I have an issue with a given topic, I need to not only speak to what my issues with that topic, but also speak to it in the context of how this is established fact, this is established truth of the project. Once again, it raises that barrier to objection so that folks are more encouraged to think through their position before they raise an objection that could distract the project from moving forward. And let's look at our final function of status reports, and that's to inform decision making. And there are three pieces of this. The first one is that a status report identifies the issues and risks of the project. And this is what most folks associate as the purpose of status reporting. As I said above, we actually believe controlling disruptions is a far more important purpose of status reporting, but identifying issues and risks is clearly an important function as well. The second component is that it provides management breathing space, and this is pretty interesting. A status report does a couple things here. One is that it prevents surprises. So as a risk is identified, you can tee that risk up in your status report to alert management that, look, we haven't experienced this issue yet. It's still a risk, not an issue, but it is on our radar screen and it does concern us. So you're able to give management and other stakeholders an early heads up so they're not surprised by things. But the second piece of this is that it is a very powerful tool for helping everyone on the project think clearly. In many projects, you're going to come across issues that are particularly complex and difficult to understand. And the act of taking those issues and distilling them down into simple language that can be published in a status report is a very powerful way of ordering the project manager's thoughts around a given issue. And what it also does, it provides clear information to management and stakeholders who may need to make a decision on this issue down the road. So they have a chance to mull it over. Instead of having to deal with you showing up in their office with your hair on fire with an issue that's threatening the project, you're writing it out in the status report allows them to read it at their leisure, to mull it over, and to be prepared for the discussion they're going to have with you later on. Very important component of informed decision making. And finally, as I alluded to above, the status report serves as a focusing tool for the PM to make sure he thinks through what's going on in the project and what he wants to say about it at a strategic level, not a tactical level. A PM will spend enough time as it is working on tactical issues, on day-to-day activities of the project. But the status report is an opportunity for him to pull up and to think through, okay, aside from all the things that have exhausted me over the past week, what have we really done? Okay, what are the real issues, and have we really made progress against them? It's a very powerful tool for helping the project manager take a checkup from the next. Now, before digging into how to put a status report together, I'd like to spend a little time talking about how status reports work. It's one thing to know how to put a status report together, but it's another thing to understand that once you've put it together and sent it out, how does it work? How does it perform these three functions that we just got through talking about? So let's look at how status reports work.